Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Goodine, pastor of Church on Wheels Spoken Word out of Deltona, Florida, and welcome you to Bible Study 2024. This is the Thursday before Easter. In Holy Week, it is called Maundy Thursday. Maundy is Latin for commandment, and there was a commandment that was given. So tonight, we are continuing our power of God's names. Tonight we are going to do Jehovah Tsidkenu. Jehovah Tsidkenu. Jehovah Tsidkenu. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you all for coming tonight and not thinking it robbery to take time out of your busy schedule to come be with us tonight. Like us on YouTube. At Pastor Jeffrey Goodine. You're supposed to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. If you subscribe every time a new video is put up on YouTube, you will get a notification. They say you get so many subscribers, they send you a plaque or something in the mail, whatever. Like us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Church on Wheels, Let the Good News Roll. Facebook Live is Jeffrey Goodine. Twitter, which is now X, at Goodine Jeffrey. Instagram, Goodine Jeffrey. And Clubhouse, Church on Wheels Ministry. I ask that you send me an email, pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I will add you to the list, and you will get a copy of the handout for Bible study. We will give you a copy of the handout that you could follow along with us, so that you could tune in, invite a friend, have a watch party. As I said, this is Holy Week, and again, you're going to hear a whole lot of things that are going on. You're going to hear, just mounds and mounds of things about Easter, and then you're going to have some people that are going to say call it a pagan holiday, and then you're going to have some people that are going to be embellishing on certain things. It is what it is, okay? Easter time. Same story, a different day. Same story, a different day. So there's nothing really, that's going to change. It's going to always be the same. It's going to always be the same. I don't know why. Why am I not going here? Tonight, Jehovah Tsidkenu. Jehovah Tsidkenu, the Lord our righteousness. The Lord our righteousness. Now, the basis, the foundation of this is in the book of Jeremiah. Now, when you know about the book of Jeremiah, you'll realize that Jeremiah's job as a prophet was to stand at the temple gate and prophesy to the people coming to the temple. That was his thing. That was his job. His job was not to talk to the people out there, as they say. Jeremiah's job was to stand at the temple gate and prophesy to the people that are coming to the temple. The elders and then the lay people and all. His job was to prophesy to them and for what they had done. Jeremiah was after the leaders of the church, or today would be the pastors, the bishops, whatever. His job was to prophesy to them because they were leading the people astray. Jeremiah's job was to stand at the temple gate. Now, listen, that would be like today, Jeremiah the prophet would be standing at the church door waiting for you to come in, and he would prophesy to those people that are coming to the temple. That was his job. Prophesying to the people that come to the temple. Because they were going to be punished with the 70-year captivity for what they had done. But Jeremiah's job was to talk to the pastors, the elders, the priests, because he said they were leading the people astray. And so he was prophesying to them, not to the lay people per se, even though, yes, it was beneficial to them, but his job was to prophesy to the elders, pastors, the preachers, whomever, the priests, whoever was in charge, whoever was leading the people. This was his job. So, and he's asking them about what they're doing. He's reminding them of what they're doing and that it is falling short. So, in our handout for tonight, the Lord our righteousness, Jehovah Sidkenu. The Lord our righteousness. When we pursue righteousness, we will discover our spirit being fed, our soul will expand, our body will change, and our life will be restored as God originally intended. He will take pieces and reconstruct the beauty and strength that is in us. So when you talk about that, Jeremiah is set at a time when the northern tribe has already been taken by the Assyrian king. So the northern tribe was gone. Now, the southern tribe of Judah is now getting ready to be punished by the king of Babylon because of what they did. And when we look, and I put Jeremiah 23:8, we'll get to that when he says he will take pieces. They're scattered. If you look at Jeremiah chapter 23, and I put the foundation in the book of Jeremiah. God's name, Jehovah Sidkenu, is found twice in this book. This is the only place where this name is found in the Bible. And it's found twice. Jeremiah addresses the leaders of the people. He addresses the priests and whoever's in charge. And we look at Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 1. It says, "Woe be unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, saith the Lord. Therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel against the pastors that feed my people. You have scattered my flock, have driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doings, saith the Lord." Now, he's blaming, not blaming, but yes he is. He's blaming the pastors and the priests and everybody else who's in charge. You say, you're scattering the people. So evidently there's been some false doctrine, or there's been some things that are going on inside of the pastoralship of the people that God didn't like. So he raised up a prophet to address them, the leaders. Because he's saying, when he said, woe to them, because what they've done is they've scattered the sheep. They've driven them away. They've driven them away. And he's going to punish them for that. That the 70 years of captivity that is imminent, that Jeremiah talks about. This is the 70-year captivity by the Babylonian king. See, with God, what he's, and you see and you reading about what is he's got the people, they believe in him for a little while, and then they go astray. Then he sends the enemy, and then they get back in line, and then they do the same thing over. Well, this time, God said, no more. And so he's telling the priests what they have done. They have scattered the people. And he said he's going to visit upon you the evil of what you've done. So if you've led the people astray, then he's going to bring the enemy in to scatter you, to lead you astray. And that was Jeremiah's job.
Kind of like a history repeating itself type of thing. We got that going on now, and we got 7 years of tribulation coming.
Mm-hmm. You've got stuff.
What you could say is like 7 years of captivity.
Right. We've got for what is happening today, and we see it today, that a lot of pastors are leading the people astray.
Oh yeah.
The Bible even says that in the last days that even the ones that claim to be followers are going to be misled. So if you're going to be misled, then there's a punishment for that. Because there's somebody out there that's leading you astray. Somebody. See, this was what Paul was writing to the churches, especially at Philippi and at Corinth, is that, what happened? You started out good, but then you allowed these different ideologies to come in. And you got to remember now, when these ideologies come in, they're really not coming out of left field anywhere. They're close. They're so close to you might almost believe it if you're not strong in your faith. So what Jeremiah is saying is telling him is that God said, you all are going to be punished for this. Not the people, not the lay people. Because the lay people are the sheep. But you all are the shepherd. Yeah. And you all are leading them astray. You're scattering in them. And so now he's going to send in the scatter. And when we see that first the northern kingdom has been taken and scattered by the king of Assyria. And now the southern tribe, Judah, is now getting ready to be taken captive by the king of Babylon. They're going to be punished. They're going to be punished for what they've done. So you see, Jeremiah addresses the leaders of the people, and that's the thing that sets Jeremiah. See, all of the prophets have a uniqueness to them. Some prophesied before captivity, some prophesied during captivity, and some prophesied after captivity. So Jeremiah is one of those that are prophesying before captivity. He's telling them what's going to happen and who's responsible. And so we look in verse 23, you'll see that he's talking to the pastors, the leaders of the church. He said, you all are scattering my sheep. God said, you scattering my sheep. Thus saith the Lord, that you all are the ones supposed to be feeding the people, and look what you've done. You've scattered them. You've driven them away.
I think in the New Testament, Paul addressed that as, you're going to account to a higher standard being the shepherds or the leaders.
Right. And he said, and in New Testament, he said he's going to bring it double
Yeah.
to the leaders because you know better and you are scattering the sheep. So you think that's the context because they were not seeking after righteousness. They were going their own way and doing whatever it is that they wanted to do. I put your God's standard has been compromised. God's standard has been compromised. So they were supposed to be seeking righteousness, but they're not. They're seeking their own way. And I put here values clarification. And values clarification in Judges chapter 21, and when you go to the book of Judges, you will see what it is that, come here, Judges chapter 21 and verse 25 says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. So values clarification, in other words, we put value on what we do from our own eyes. If it's right with us, then it's right. And so the same thing that happened in the book of Judges, Jeremiah is addressing that right now to the leaders of the church, that what you all are doing is wrong. You're not seeking after righteousness. You're doing what's right in your own eyes, not what's right in God's eyes. And so he's addressing that. So, and again, in the book of Judges, there was no king of Israel. And we know, and if you don't know, at that point they had asked for a king, and God told them they wanted a king like the other people had. The groups of people have king. And God told them the king that you're going to get is going to be a bad king. He's going to take all your crops. He's going to take all your animals. He's going to take your sons and put them in the war. He's going to take your daughters and put them in his harem, and going to take your crops. He's going to do all of that because they wanted to be like them.
Well, without a king or a leader, there's just anarchy and lawlessness, right. and God did that on purpose. He installed good kings and bad kings, and even today, I've been telling people, quit worrying about who the next king or president or leader is going to be. We should follow the King of Kings,
right?
And then it doesn't matter what happens with a good king, good leader, good bad king.
Bad king, bad. It doesn't matter. It would be beyond.
We're going to be all right,
right?
As long as we're following the right king,
right? And so what Jeremiah is saying is the leaders are the ones that are causing this.
Yeah.
Because if they following the leader and the leader is causing the sheep to go astray and scatter them, then God's going to send somebody in to gather them back together. So he sends the king of Babylon, the Babylonian king, to come into Judah. And they had 70 years of captivity. Remember, the northern tribe now has already been taken captive by the king of Assyria. So now you see God's people doing their own thing, and they're being punished for it. They're being punished for it. So what Jeremiah really is, it's sad because he's telling them and he's prophesying to them what's going to happen. That's like somebody telling you, yeah, you're getting ready to get it. Especially when when your daddy get home. Now you got to sit there and live through the pain and the agony of, boy, is he coming home? And then you try to do things, but it just does not happen. It just does not happen. And I think that when Jeremiah is telling the people, Jeremiah is making sure that he does what he's supposed to do. And Jeremiah is telling them, you all are the problem. Not the lay people, but the leaders, the pastors. That's why his job was not to prophesy to the sheep. His job was to prophesy to the elders, the ones that come to the temple. That's supposed to be holier than thou, you know. They're the ones that he's prophesying to. So now detail the warning of impending judgment the people were to face due to their rebellion against God. They weren't seeking righteousness. They were not seeking righteousness. They were doing their own thing. And then the sheep or the lay people listening to these leaders find themselves on outs with God. Find themselves on outs with God. So remember now, not only were the leaders taken into captivity, but the lay people too. And in fact, the Babylonian king took all of the smart people per se, or the educated ones, and put them in the palace. That's where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego ended up. Daniel, that's where they ended up. In the palace. So the warning is from Jeremiah that there's an impending judgment. And we know, and this is the beginning, this is the prophesying of the 70 years of captivity. Jeremiah is prophesying the 70 years of captivity that's coming by the hands of the Babylonian king. And so he's telling them, you need to get right. You need to get right. You need to get right. But you know the people, now, when you read Jeremiah, you will see they got mad at Jeremiah. The priests and the elders, they got mad at Jeremiah. They put Jeremiah in jail. They put him in jail to shut him up. And he still wouldn't stop. Then they did what we would call the ultimate to Jeremiah. Because after they took him out of jail, they thought he would stop, but he continued. And what they did then was they took Jeremiah and threw him in a cistern. In the muck and the mire. So when you hear people say, well, he raised me up out of the muck and the mire, they're talking about Jeremiah. Jeremiah was in the cistern. These are the elders now. These are God's people. These are God-fearing, whatever you want to call it.
Church folk.
Yeah, church folk. The pastors and the leaders and the bishops and all threw him in the cistern, hoping he would die. Because they didn't want to hear him criticize them for what they were doing to the people. And God sent an Egyptian to get him. The Egyptian didn't know why, didn't know where it was. God led him there and got Jeremiah up out of the muck and the mire.
It's like
Out of the
today they're
system.
censoring us what we say. It's like today they're censoring us what we say.
Right.
If they don't like it, if it doesn't, go with their beliefs, then you're,
Yeah, you
you're a
cast out.
wacko.
Yeah.
And you get censored.
Yeah. And so they, when you read the book of Jeremiah, man, you'll see what God-fearing people will do when you're talking against what they've done. He was bringing to light. That's why I said, and you read, his job was to stand at the temple gate and get the people that come to the temple, not those that are not coming. He wasn't after them. He was after the ones that are coming to the temple, the leaders, the bishops and the pastors and everybody. That was
The upper echelon.
right in the church. And they didn't like it. They didn't like it. They put him in jail, tried to shut him up. He wouldn't stop. And then they got fed up with him, I guess, you know. And then they threw him in a cistern to die, in the muck and the mire. So whenever you hear people say, he raised me up out of the muck and the mire, that was Jeremiah. And God sent an Egyptian to get him. To get him. So when you read Jeremiah, Jeremiah's a sad, it's sad in a sense that the leaders were the ones that were responsible. And they were the ones that were leading the people astray. And it's kind of sad to see what it is. Now, but here, God reveals another aspect of himself through his name. He combines Jehovah, which is the self-revealing God, along with Sekenu, which stands for righteousness. So, the Lord our righteousness. Jehovah Sekenu. God has proclaimed his righteousness in the midst of cultural chaos. Now you think about it. If I'm coming to the temple and I'm listening to these people, and these people are leading me over here, and you got somebody else leading them over there, it's chaos. It's chaos. But God reminds people of who he is in the midst of the chaos. So see that when there's chaos going on in your life, when there's chaos, and yes, there is chaos that goes on in your life. If you either just got out of some chaos,
We're about to get in.
yeah, you just got out of some chaos, you're in some chaos, or you're getting ready to get into some chaos in your life. But God proclaims his righteousness, even in the chaos in our lives. Even in the chaos in our lives. So here God is proclaiming his righteousness in the midst of all of this chaos. In the midst of all of this that's going on, he's proclaiming his name, righteousness, in the chaos. And the 70 years of captivity, you know, chaos. When he's taking them. Chaos. King of Babylon, when you read there, they were captured. He asked for all of the smartest. He wanted all of the top workers. He took all of them and put them into the palace to serve him. Chaos. Chaos. Now, righteousness can be defined as the standard required for people to be acceptable to God. Righteousness. His righteousness. Our righteousness. That we have to be acceptable to God. It's through our righteousness. Now, we can't really live up to that per se because, again, we need help. We've tried living righteous. We've tried that. We know it. You know it don't work. We've tried that. We've tried that. And it didn't work. In Matthew 5 and 6, this is one of the Beatitudes. Okay, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Thirst after righteousness, which means you have to be seeking God's righteousness, not doing your own thing. So that's where the people are, that's where the leaders are caught up. They're doing their own thing, and they're not seeking God's righteousness. So, and they're leading the people astray. So you see what happens. 70 years of captivity. The impending, which means that God has already told. And this is why it's happening. It's happening because you leaders have led my people astray. You have scattered my people. For whatever doctrines you're using, you're not seeking after after righteousness. You're doing your own thing. And a lot of times your own thing is not righteousness when you're seeking. We're just not. So I put a note here. When we cease to hunger and thirst for righteousness, we eliminate the care, peace, and provision that comes from Jehovah Sekenu. He is no longer the central force. We have moved him out. The people have moved God away. If you're scattering the people, and God knows you're scattering the people, then that means you're not seeking after his righteousness. You're doing your own thing. And that's what they're being punished for. That's what they're being punished for. Because the leaders are not seeking after God's righteousness. They're not seeking to live what is acceptable to God. Now, when we say what's acceptable to God, now, we're not perfect. There's no way for us to be perfect. But we can live seeking his righteousness. In our imperfections, we can live to seek his righteousness. And our righteousness is through Jesus Christ. So if we seek him, then we would be acceptable to God. We would be acceptable. But if we start doing our own thing, then we lose out on that. He's no longer the central force. And that's a problem. Because once he gets out of our lives, once he gets out of being the central force in our lives, then these things happen. These things happen. When we take our eyes off the prize. When we start doing our own thing. When we start seeking our own righteousness. In other words, what I'm doing, we say, what I'm doing, as long as it ain't hurting nobody, then it's all right to do. That may not be in God's eye. You know, it may not be in God's eye. It just may not. It might be right in your eye, but not in God's eye. So if it's right in your eye and not God's eye, then you're not seeking after his righteousness. So then you're not seeking to be acceptable to him. And, you know, either way, that's a bad deal. That's kind of a no-win situation. You're seeking your own way. You're doing what's right in your mind. And that may not be what God has planned. And that's how we get ourselves in these situations. In fact, the people the leaders find themselves in a situation that they cannot get out of. They are condemned by God because they are not seeking his righteousness. And for them not seeking their righteousness and doing things in their own way, they are being led astray. And there's a punishment that comes to that. There's a punishment that comes with that. And we've seen it in our lives. You know, when we do things, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, congregation, anybody can hear me. You know that you've done those things and you were punished for it. And then when you cried out, he heard you and he delivered you from all your troubles. It's like you go astray, you're seeking your own righteousness. Then you're punished. And then you cry out. He hears your cry. And then he delivers you from all of your troubles. And guess what? Then you turn around and go do it again. And the God that we have, he just keeps answering. He just keeps answering. Because he doesn't want anyone to be left behind. So he keeps answering. And one of these days, it's going to be too late for us. That's why I say, that's why I sing, "Pass Me Not," because we don't, he may not catch me in my best behavior. And if he comes back at that moment, when I'm seeking my own righteousness, when I'm seeking to do things my way, then I'm going to be left behind.
We need to be less Frank Sinatra and more Jesus.
Yeah, yes, yes. Now, put your actions and not feelings. Now, when we're saying action, there's something that we have to do. When we hunger after righteousness, we become more aware of our sinfulness, and it does not feel good. That, I think, is one of the problems. One of the things that keeps us from following him is because once we start following God, then we realize that all of the sinful things in our lives that we're doing, we've been doing, we've done, now the light is shined on. We see it. We recognize it. And that's not a good position to be in. Because we see our sinfulness now. You see, when we're doing it, we don't see it. But when we start seeking God's righteousness, then all of that is now we become more aware of it. Righteousness exposes areas where sin has infected our life so we can deal with the problem and return to a right relationship with God. So when you see Jeremiah 23:5, returning to a relationship. See, the problem we have is we don't want, how am I going to say this? We're aware of our unrighteousness. By us being aware of our unrighteousness, and we see our lives, and we said, okay, I need to get a little bit closer with God through his son, Jesus Christ. But when I do that, then I look at all of the sinful things in my life, and then the first thing I say is what? That I'm not worthy. I fall short. Yes, we do. But we still have to seek after it. We still have to seek after it. And in Jeremiah 23:5, it says, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth." That's Jesus Christ. Coming out of the lineage of David, the tribe of Judah. That he's going to raise him up. That is the righteous branch. And again, we're in Holy Week. You know, Jesus Christ, righteous. Raised him up. So he will execute judgment and justice in the earth. So you see, God got away. He said, if you don't do it, I'll do it. And now he raised up Jesus. Now I put here hypostatic union. This is combining human nature with the divine nature into one person. That's Jesus Christ. He had human features, human attributes. He had feelings. He cried. Human features, human attributes. So,
He was tempted.
right, he was tempted. Hypostatic union, that is what the human nature. Now we put after his birth, death, and resurrection, the righteous branch fulfilled the intended purpose as Jehovah Sekenu. After Jesus' birth, death, and resurrection, the purpose of him is our righteousness. So if we seek after Jesus Christ, then we seek after righteousness. Remember Abraham, it was appointed righteous to him. But why? Because he listened to God. It was appointed righteousness, which means he was acceptable to God. So when we see that Jesus, his birth, after his birth, death, and resurrection, that he is the intended purpose as our righteousness. So we can't do it ourselves. So we have to seek righteousness to be acceptable to God. Well, to be acceptable to God, you have to go through Jesus Christ. What did you say? You know, the only way to the Father is through me. Now, people, you're going to hear a whole lot of people say there are a whole bunch of ways to get to the Father. You know, hey, whatever, man. Whatever. I ain't going to argue with you. You got your way, but I'm telling you my way, and I'm telling you what the Bible says. The Bible said, Jesus said that the way to get to the Father is through me. Well, if Jesus is the righteous branch, then if we seek Jesus, then we're going to seek righteousness. But do you know, when we start seeking Jesus, we see all of the sinful things in our lives that we know it was there, but we really kind of didn't pay attention to it. But once we start following Jesus, then those things become more prevalent. They become, the light gets turned brighter now. We get to see those things. And we get to feel those things. And we know it's not. We know it's wrong.
And some of those old familiar sins, they just don't automatically, with a magic wand, go away. But with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, living in us, as we seek to become more righteous, then, you know, we start chipping away at it. You know, some of the old familiar sins that have dealt with is, you know, yeah, you know it's there, and now you start feeling guilty when it happens, and you're like, oh man, you know, don't do that again. And then,
right.
So you start slowly but surely chipping away at it, you know, and it becomes less and less frequent.
Yes, and you know, and when those things come to the forefront, okay, we realize that those things, that's what they use against us. That's what they use to call us hypocrites. Is that while we are seeking God's righteousness, we're still sinful in nature. So when we're seeking God's righteousness through Jesus Christ, but all of our actions don't fit up to that, and you know they're waiting, they're watching you like a hawk to see you slip up. to see you slip up so they can say, see, that's why I don't go to church. No, it ain't because of what I did. You ain't going to church. Don't put that on me.
I'm like, see, that's why I do go to church,
Yeah.
because I'm screwed up.
Yeah, and you need to come with me. And let's try to, let's seek after this
I
righteousness.
still got some fixing that needs to happen.
Yeah, let's do this righteousness. Now, if you think about Jeremiah talking to these priests, prophesying to the priests and the elders and all of those people that come into the temple that are in charge of the flock, he was telling them, you're not seeking after righteousness. You're not seeking to be acceptable to God. You're doing your own thing. And God don't like that. So now he's going to punish you and him and her and them and everybody if you don't change your ways. But this is going to happen. So until we seek his righteousness, until we seek Jehovah Sekenu, then we will always be leading the people astray. And so when they talk about pastors, and we see the things that are going on today in the church. We see what's happening. We see what's happening. God has they're not seeking after his righteousness. Now, are you going to be righteous overnight? Probably not. Because there's some repenting you have to do.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, it'll take a while. Some of us might take a little bit longer, but don't worry about it. Just hang in there. It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Yeah, it reminds me of the potter and the clay. He's still molding.
Right, he's still molding.
Not a finished product yet.
Yeah, he's still molding. And you will not be that finished product until the day you die.
Absolutely, amen.
Now, you can say anything you want, but